I wonder what's on your mind. What are your thoughts? You may have a couple of questions for Sylvain to... I mean, some of you know a little bit about Syriza and how they built up their following from smaller groups working together, and how they almost won their general election by building a coalition that really was meeting the needs of the people and putting the alternatives. So there's a variety. There's some detail that might be about our own party. There are some wider issues about making links with Europe, but there are also thoughts and plans to be made about how we create the mass movement within our own country that generates the hunger, the appetite for something different, and also the confidence for people to demand that. Have we got one or two microphones, Howard?
We've got one.
We've got one on each side.
One on each side, that's brilliant. So I just pretend we're not up on a panel anymore. Anyone want to kickstart us with some thoughts? We start with the gentleman at the front down there.
Yeah, Hugh Small, West Central London. Moody's cut the AAA rating yesterday. This is based on a mistake. It's not a mistake that's deliberately engineered by the government, but the fact is that the reporting of UK GDP is too low. Now, a lot of Greens say take no notice of GDP, but Moody's takes notice of this figure, this reported figure, and their taking notice of it is going to lead to greater hardship because it's going to increase the cost of borrowing. Now, the reason that the measurement is too low is because it omits certain green assets, namely intangible assets. And by the way, Sylvain, I read yesterday or the day before in the paper that France is going to cut research and development because it's trying to get its GDP up to meet EU debt to GDP standards. Well, the fact of the matter is that GDP will be extended to cover R&D from next year. So France is cutting R&D to please the EU, while it's inserting R&D into the national accounts to please the OECD. So the right hand doesn't know what the left is doing, and by removing and by cutting GDP, they're actually going to depress even further their. By removing R&D, they're going to depress even further their GDP for next year. So what I'm saying is that the austerity programme in the UK is based on the popular delusion that the economy is flatlining. Now, I know we get some objections when we say in an audience like this that the UK is growing, because it seems to sort of give some credit to the current government or something, but it's absolutely nothing to do with them. It's to do with business, which is taking no notice at all of the government. So understand the language of your enemy. That language is GDP, and pick on the weaknesses and make sure that the fact that green investment is left out of GDP is known, because it doesn't have to be. It can be calculated roughly and used to impress the credit ratings, used to demolish the myth that the UK worker is unproductive. Have you heard of this? You know, GDP is down, employment is up. How do you explain that conundrum? Well, it's obvious, isn't it? The worker is unproductive. Now, whose narrative does that fit, you know? I mean, don't you smell a rat there? So, that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Right.
Hi, Derek Wall, International Coordinator of the Green Party. So it's funny to be quoted, so thank you for that. A couple of things. I think splendid what you're all saying, and as eco-socialists we're putting socialism on its right side. So if you go back to Marx and Engels, they were sincere Greens and eco-socialists, but the left lost that in the last century. I think one thing that we should emphasise is where across the world the left and Greens are succeeding. And for example, if we look at Iceland, where you have the Socialist Alliance and Green Left, and from data protection to resisting the cuts, they've created a splendid example. And in Latin America, we know that in Ecuador, the left government were re-elected with 65% of the vote last week, and that shows there's an alternative. And even in the kind of left liberal press, like The Independent and The Guardian, Chavez, Morales, Correa, they're all damned, but we should look at their examples, not perfect, but huge examples of where the left were defeated in Latin America, you had vibrant social movements, governments took power and have made change. So that's the example we should follow. Secondly, it's got to be about property rights. Eco-socialism is about democratic ownership of property, and the austerity agenda is about privatising everything, so it's floated on the stock market, so the 0.1% get control, and assets are just sweated down. So it's got to be about the commons, about collective democratic ownership. And since Elinor Ostrom won the Nobel Prize for the Commons, Elinor, from her very liberal background, that economic alternative is on the agenda. And finally, all the time, we have to work practically and think tactically. And I'm hoping that in France there is potential for the NPA, the Left Front and the Greens to work together, because if on the left we're not united, we'll be defeated. So thank you.
And the next there.
Hi, I'm Oliver Chelston from Nottingham Green Party, and my question basically is, are there any plans in the future, and this is more to do with actually European politics, for the European United Left group and the Greens to cooperate in the future? Because I wonder whether, and particularly as the Greens, I do believe personally are moving in an eco-socialist direction, whether there will in the future be maybe coalition building or working with our democratic socialist comrades in Brussels. And I wondered if the panel had anything to say about that.
I think on the European level, that's also why we have today sort of me being here. But there's already, well, on the Green, if you're talking about European politics for the Green Party, but I can't talk about that.
We might have other people in the room who'd like to come in on part of the answer. Do you just want to say about coalition building in France as it is?
Well, in France, obviously,
Mélenchon
as I
just
said,
met with the Greens, hasn't he?
yeah, we're talking with the Greens now on a number of issues. And the European Green will probably start talking with our, cousin parties as well, because we all are the left. I mean, within Green parties across the world, there are fringes, and more than fringes sometimes, who are feeling a bit disenchanted with the mob socialists, if I say that this way. So we are at the crossroads within some Green parties. That's all I can say for you.
Yeah, and briefly, Peter, just and then I'll come back to.
Yeah, I don't know much about it, but I know that the Green Party, being what it was, quite left-wing compared to most European Green parties, and there's also quite a lot of lefties in the European Parliament who are not part of the same group that we're part of. So maybe what needs to happen in Europe is what the Green left says. The Reds need to be greener, and the Greens need to be redder.
Melanie Strickland, Tower Hamlets Green Party. I think a big part of the answer has to be civil disobedience, because this is the only thing that's ever, radically shifted forward society. And I wondered, Peter, whether you knew about the Poplar Council in 1921, the Labour Council, Socialist Council, that took civil disobedience to reject. They refused to increase taxes on the poor of Poplar, of East London, because it was completely unjust. Lloyd George's government demanded it. The councillors ended up eventually taken to court. They went to prison for 6 weeks, but they had huge popular support, and other councils in East London were starting to follow suit, and they made some real gains for the people of East London. So do you think that this is a good example of how we might move forward? That kind of civil disobedience at the local level.
Well, if you want my view, I think that's right. And I think if Brighton Council said we won't do the administrative work that's required in order to impose a bedroom tax, We're not going to give any, we're going to tell our officers not to give that task any time, any time at all. You know, that would be making us mad. It may get them into trouble. I'm not sure that it would be illegal. It may bring the commissioners in quicker. It would be worth it. Okay. The other system, civil disobedience, of course, which Brighton is maybe going to have to. I mean, Green's in power anywhere else, but certainly in Brighton most pertinently, is that there will be direct action to stop people being evicted from their homes. And on which side will the Green Party across the country be in relation to Brighton if we have mass direct action against people being evicted, or against paying the council tax, or against the benefit tax?
Hi, Irene South from Northern Forest and Redbridge. I just want to sort of really make two comments and post some issues around an alternative political narrative, because I think that is essentially what we're all talking about, is how to do that. And just very briefly, just two things to throw into that. It's the difficulty I think we face. I mean, I think, as you, Sylvain, rightly pointed out, you know, we're not about green capitalism, and yet, you know, whether we like it or not, within our broad green church, there is green capitalism. I mean, there are elements of the European Green Group New Deal, which is green capitalism, nothing more than that. Secondly, then we've got the sort of broader context. I mean, if you look at Eurobarometer reports and then look at UK stuff that comes out from YouGov, you have the strange paradox where the majority of people still support austerity, yet a bigger majority actually agree that the impact of austerity is unfair. So you have this paradox that we're in, whereby to a certain extent in developing an alternative political narrative, we need to recognise that to a certain extent there is a lot of work to be done to simply change that perspective. And then I just want to sort of touch on three things, because I'm conscious other people want to speak. But I mean, there are three elements of that new political narrative, which also I think are really quite relevant. Remain hit upon the first one, which is that it has to be a post-political party narrative. And that, again, I think will need us to think deeply about what kind of political party we want to be. Because in my view, politics is broken, and what Melanie was saying about civil disobedience is really extremely relevant. I mean, people have used the term 1%. Well, where did it come from? It came from Occupy. It didn't come from inside political party movements. Second point I want to make is the discourse of the new narrative is about the discourse on inequality. I mean, what do we mean? It can't go back, I think, in terms of the old-style discourse on inequality, because I simply don't think that will actually have any traction. We're talking about the loss of the middle in a way here, to a certain extent. And we're talking quite rightly, as Peter says, about what weight to put on the rich and corporations to ensure that they contribute effectively. And groups like Uncut have been far more effective in addressing that agenda than we have within the party. And then the last thing, which is the real difficult thing for us, because it's so core to our own values, is when is enough enough? How do you, in a political narrative, address that issue of when is enough enough? It cannot simply be what I consider to be a kind of mechanistic, party political message of sustainability that will actually win that emotion. There has to be something political, there has to be something moral, there has to be something value-based to that. And you know what Derek's talking about when he refers to the Commons is essentially, inherently, a moral and value base that has to be re-injected into the political narrative.
I have to... Right, this is for anybody who's interested in an affordable rail travel. Currently, your rail service is supplied by First Group. If you are in the west of England. Thanks to Richard Branson, now this group would be running the West Coast Main Line, but they're not. Thank you, Richard Branson. I bet you've heard, if you're in the sort of transport world, you will have heard, it's very easy to take over a franchise when it's finished. Well, it finished on the 25th of October. Not a word from anybody apart from the rail unions. Now here's a campaign that the rail unions and passengers can work together, and that is for the next 6 months to drum up the fact that if the directly operated rail which Condems might have already got rid of, but they're currently running the East Coast Main Line at a profit and very, very well. If that form of running the West Coast Main Line and then the rest, oh, and here, if anybody wants to look afterwards, this is what First Group would have had, which is right from the north of England right down to the south. Which is a multinational bus company which is out to destroy trade unions, which have destroyed or reduced very much trade unions in the United States. So here's a campaign, it's 6 months. So anybody interested, let me know. Oh, by the way, I belong to a group in Bristol, a nice timid name, Friends of Suburban Bristol Railways. Guess what? RMT have given us £100 this year. ASLEF have given us £100 this year. Have they given anything to Bristol Green Party?
Yeah. Try TSSA. Okay, we've got.
No, that's yeah.
Bluebell Iconoclastes, Leeds City Green Party. I read on Wikipedia that the last election in Bhutan, first ever I think, was won by the Peace and Prosperity Party, and I thought, oh, I'll vote for that. And then along comes austerity here, and I'm thinking, yeah, I just think, you know, as a political party, it would be rather nice if we could have this, you know, okay, we can't knock on everybody's door, but rather than wait to the next election, I'm very keen that, you know, especially in our target wards, especially, you know, we knock on the door and ask people, you know, campaign and see, you know, who's actually in favour, you know, first question, you know, do you fully support austerity? And if not, why not? And then take it from there. And then if people are then looking to the Labour Party to save the NHS, again we can have that debate. And if people are actually opposed to these horrendous cuts, you know, and the dismantling of the NHS, we might see if they're interested in joining the Green Party even. Okay.
I'll just interject here because I can. On the way towards building towards People's Assembly Against Austerity and Privatisation, there's the opportunity to throw open lots of meetings of various sizes. It's easy to have those debates sometimes in a crowd than just on the doorstep, and people can sit and listen to other people before they've got the conversation. No, I did it on the way from the bus stop this morning. I'm incorrigible, I am. One at a time, I guess.
Hi, I'm Tony Kelso from North Kirklees Green Party. I've just been to the meeting for the European Greens, and I was very concerned that the place where we've got the most MEPs are France and Germany, and in the UK the only MEPs we've got are from the south-east of England, which is within the London, Milan, Frankfurt triangle. Now, I'm a disabled person, and I read that Keith Taylor, the MEP for the South East, was praised for making it so that all airports are accessible for disabled people. But nobody in Dewsbury says to me, it's great that the Greens have done this, because people like Keith Taylor are out of touch with the needs of ordinary disabled people. The question I want to ask is, do you think there's a danger that the Green Party in Europe is going to be out of touch with the people in the poorer areas, since they only represent people from the richer areas?
Well, we have to bear that in mind, obviously, as a party, don't we? Anybody else?
Behind you.
Oh, Linda Duckenfield, Sheffield Green Party. I just want to, you know, the People's Assembly Against Austerity sounds very exciting, and I want to talk about its tactics, really, and picking up on what Melanie said about civil disobedience. I think New Internationalist, the recent copy of New Internationalist was very inspiring about the feral rich. And I think, you know, we should make that very much a plank of what we do, like Occupied does. And going for all forms of civil disobedience that target the feral rich and impose austerity on them, we do have a semantic problem with the word austerity, because if we just say we're anti-austerity, it sounds like we want to be profligate spenders, which of course in the Green Party we don't. We believe in thrift. Thrift is very different from austerity. And I'm hopeful that this campaign won't be a purely defensive one of current positions, but will be very creative about new options, but in particular make it very widely seen how obscene it is to be plutocratic.
In that discussion, the more we can shape it, ideas of what the alternatives could be. We've got a young green at the front there, and then we've got 1, 2 at the back there, and another 3, 4 along. I haven't looked at the time actually. That's not a couple of minutes each, and then we should be all 5. We can get another one in maybe.
Thank you for calling me a young green. I'm not, but thank you. No, I'm over 30, but thank you very much. You've made my day. I really liked what the last speaker said, by the way. Just one thing. I've really liked what most people have said and what the speaker said, and I think something saying united we stand is really important, including across Europe and everything. But from the same perspective, I have one criticism about what we're talking about in terms of Brighton and Hove. Of course, what they're doing is not perfect, but considering the fact it's our first Green Council and they are operating under the most insane government you could possibly imagine, I think the idea of suggesting like disobedience to one extent, yes, but resignation or whatever is perhaps not helpful, because we want to see more green councils, and actually I think they're heading the way that they are probably one of the only sane councils, in fact the only sane council